Hi, my name is Alicia Rump, and for this research presentation, I decided that I would talk about the role of step-parents, children, and families in response to how the media portrays them to be. In an article written by Segrin and Nobby, they say further cultural beliefs perpetrated by media and folktales either stigmatize stepfamilies, for example, the wicked stepmother stereotype, or foster unrealistic expectations, such as the myth of instant love exemplified by the television show The Brady Bunch. These cultural beliefs may influence individuals' behaviors, perceptions, and expectations with regard to remarriage and stepfamily relationships. The main stigma or trope that we tend to hear about would be that of the evil stepmother. This figure is seen throughout movies such as Cinderella, Snow White, and Tangled. This type of stepmother is often found in relations to innocent young women with a father that is either absent or dead, and where they are trying to protect some superficial power, such as money, beauty, or fame. Another trope we often see is of the abusive stepfather. While the stepmother is often conniving and deceitful, stepfather is often abusive and physically threatening to his own stepchildren. Stepfathers are often portrayed as looking for power and control rather than looking for superficial means of happiness. In almost all movies that include a stepmother, the first mother, the original mother, will either be completely absent or long dead. In Cinderella, both of her parents are dead. In Nanny McPhee, the mother is dead. And in Harry Potter, despite his relatives not being step-family, they act as a surrogate because his parents are dead as well. Disney movies in particular are notorious for having absent or dead mothers. In over 28 Disney films, the children are either orphaned or without a mother. From those, evil stepmothers or surrogate mothers are introduced. There are many films which present examples of step-parents becoming a part of a family's lifestyle. Let us start with some movies concerning stepmothers. In Cinderella, the stepmother, along with her stepchildren, treats Cinderella as if she is nothing to them, living off of her father's money and trying to gain glory. Everyone knows the story, but the tropes, which mean common and overused themes, are present most heavily in this movie above others. Nanny McPhee is a bit different because the father is still alive and doing what we find mothers who marry abusive men often do. That is, marrying out of necessity. His kids are about to be taken from him because he cannot keep them under control. His mother-in-law thinks that he needs a mother's presence, a woman's presence, telling him to either marry or he won't be able to keep the children. The stepmother in the movie is marrying for money, aware that the father has to marry in order to keep his children, and that he comes with a large supply of money. In Tangled, Rapunzel gets kidnapped when she was a baby by Mother Gothel. Despite raising her with a fair amount of decent intentions, her motives are purely superficial and selfish, for she was after youth and beauty that only Rapunzel could provide to her. Like Mother Gothel, the Queen in Snow White is incredibly wicked and vain. She sentences Snow White to die because she is fairer and more beautiful than she. Another good example would be The Parent Trap, for the children knew that the woman set to marry their father was only in it for his money. Therefore, they do everything that they can do to stop the wedding. Meanwhile, the stepmother promises that when they do get married, the kids will be shipped off to a boarding school away from their family. These are just a few movies that perfectly show the stigma that people have when it comes to the evil stepmother. Now on to the stepfather. There are many different movies that include a stepfather who is abusive. This is the difference between women and men in media. Women are sly, conniving, and with often ulterior motives. Men are the brutes, the aggressive ones, the violent ones. A variety of films show this. In a recent movie, Kingsman: The Secret Service, Eggsy is a boy with a lot of potential, but for the most of his life it has been wasted because of his stepfather Dean. His real dad died early on in his life, and his mother was unable to care for them alone. Therefore, she marries Dean and gets them into a situation in which they cannot get out of. This Boy's Life is another movie in which the mother marries out of necessity, placing her and her son at the mercy of her new husband. Her husband seeks control, which the son is not willing to give, and therefore there is violent conflict. In the movie, The Stepfather, it is directly about the stepfather. Unbeknownst to the family at first, is after the perfect family. When they have proved to have faults, like every family does, he shows his true colors and tries to kill them because they are no longer ideal. Another example, again, proving how the media portrays step-parents based off of the genders differently, would be through the movie Domestic Disturbance. In this movie, the stepfather drives a wedge between son and his biological parents, demonstrating his control through violent actions in order to keep the son scared and unwilling to talk about what he has seen the stepfather do and the crimes that he has committed. This movie also is a prime example of a study that shows perception and management of uncertainty in new stepfamilies, and how participants indicated that they felt resentful of their new stepfamily for causing them to miss out on their other parents' lives, potentially feeding into feelings of loyalty conflicts between the two sides. This was written in an article by Affey on how step-parents can create conflicts of loyalty. Now, these have been the negative tropes when it comes to step-family members. There's some positive ones that we can see as well. These can be found in movies such as Cheaper by the Dozen and the classic The Brady Bunch. These are feel-good movies that inspire confidence in change and give the direct opposite views to those seen portraying the dark sides of the new family members. In these films, the step-parent actually assists in making the family a whole unit again, bringing each family member closer to each other than they were before. The stepmother looks after her stepchildren, and the stepfather teaches his stepchildren what he has taught his own children. Some of these positive tropes can also be found in TV shows. One example of this is in Teen Wolf, where a boy, Isaac, is abused by his real dad most of his life, later being adopted by his friend's mother, who he considers his stepmother by default and shows him love and gives him a sense of belonging. Looking into the role of step-siblings, the media has a knack of making many of the tropes the same. On one hand, they are evil, bound to never get along. Again, this is shown in Cinderella. On the other, more common hand, we see that in most movies concerning step-siblings, that while they hate each other in the beginning, they will eventually grow to like, depend on, and eventually love one another as they do in Cheaper by the Dozen. Now, instead of looking at step-parents, let us look into step-children. In an article written by Daniel J. Tomosulu, he explains that in real life, as well as in movies, stepchildren react against a new parent in an effort to get them to leave. Step-parents upset the normal routine for children. Generally, but not always, a step-parent could be fantastic, but the children will not want them there. A prime example of this would be in the movie Spy Kids 5. The stepmother is new to a family of 3, and the eldest daughter does not want her a part of the family, despite that she is good for her father and their overall well-being. Media portrays children less of a villain in this way, but as victims of change and coming to accept it. Most of the time, though, through media, you can see children at first not accepting the new parent, but after a while, they grow to trust them. This is, of course, unless the step-parent is like any of the parents mentioned in the beginning of this speech. In conclusion to how media portrayal affects how people see step-parents, children, or families, I think it is safe to say that we are all affected a little bit. If your father has money and is getting married to a woman who does not, you will fear that they are only after his money. Not that this is not a genuine fear, but the media portrays this happening in so many different movies that it feels logical that this should be the first thought, over happiness that their love may be genuine. This can be said for the opposite, though, too. If your father does not have a lot of money and finds love in a woman, often if your mother does not have a lot of money and finds love in a man, often the first thought will be, what does he want? Because it's obviously not money. If a child of 6 or 7 is watching Cinderella in the midst of her father marrying someone new, she may just assume or fear that that is what all stepmothers are like. Again, though this could work in reverse, because in real life, someone could get a really terrible step-parent when the only movies they have seen are movies such as Stupid by the Dozen and even more deceiving, The Brady Bunch. Media shows a lot of different scenarios and a whole bunch of different stories that express the complications of adding a new family member to the family. It's only natural that they affect us somehow. Obviously, we know and we are aware that most stepmothers and most stepfathers do not have vile intentions. While some do, that is not the case for all, but it is a fear that media expands on because it is one that most people are willing to be aware of.